On October 31st, 1983, the National Football League lost its founding father. At the age of 88, George Stanley Halas passed away. Sadly, we discovered that not even living legends can last forever. He was the last to witness the events that shaped the colossal pastime that is now the National Football League. Halas spanned the entire history of professional football. He was there on that humid night in 1920 when the NFL was created.
Yes, this meeting in Canton on September 17th was held in the Hupmobile showroom in his automobile agency. And of course, there weren't enough chairs for everybody, so we sat around on the running boards of the Hupmobile cars. And in order to join this group, you had to put up $100 for a franchise. I think it's worth a little more than that now. But there was never a doubt as to what type of game we had, because when I was graduating from the University of Illinois, Coach Bob Zupke said, just when you fellas get to know something about football, I lose you. And when I played semi-pro football in 1919, I knew a lot more than I did while I was in college. So I never had a doubt about the great game that was to be.
Throughout these mean and miserable years, teams often came and went overnight. But the one that remained and the one everybody wanted to beat was George Halas's Chicago Bears.
When we Packers got ready to play the Bears, they always had a cheer, you know, goes like this. Bear meat is mighty sweet. Bears are hard to beat. Let's lead them to defeat. And we'd sing that all day long. We were pretty ready to play, you know.
In 1925, Halas rocketed pro football into the nation's spotlight when he signed Red Grange to a contract with the Bears. Grange was the most glamorous college player in the country, and on a frantic barnstorming tour, the Bears played before packed stadiums across America. Pro football was suddenly transformed from a sandlot game to a big city spectacle, and the man behind it all was the Papa Bear.
George, when I met him, was his own press agent for the Bears. He did his own coaching. He played right end. He signed the players. He did his own scouting. He ran the concessions. He was the guy that looked out for the police and everything at Wrigley Field. He was a one-man gang. There would be no football league today had it not been for George Halas. There's no doubt about it.
Halas had offered the nation a taste of pro football. It would prove to be just an appetizer for the years ahead. In 1929, George Halas retired as a player, although in the decades that followed, his participation in the games was only slightly less intense than in the days when he played right end. Halas coached the Bears for 40 years, the longest coaching tenure in NFL history, directing Chicago to 7 NFL championships. He won his first when Woodrow Wilson was president. He won his last when Lyndon Johnson was in office. Visiting George Halas at the Bears practice field was always a little like visiting George Washington's Mount Vernon and finding the original owner not only in residence, but planning and directing the nation's affairs.
Hey, Carl, hold the ball, hold the ball, hold the ball, hold the ball. Let's see the way you carry that ball.
Like that.
That's right. As long as you get in that, they can't knock that thing. That's the most important thing right there. We had a fullback by the name of Giacchetti, and he'd have set a record of 13 fumbles. I showed him this the next season, he didn't have one.
Halas's innovations kept pro football moving forward. He was the first pro coach to hold practice sessions every day, the first to hire a full-time staff, and the first to use films to analyze an opponent. George Halas didn't invent the T formation, but in 1939, together with quarterback Sid Luckman, number 42, and assistant Clark Shaughnessy, he brought it back to life when other coaches had given it up for dead. The Bears' streamlined T with its man in motion and split-out wide receivers opened up the game, while the rest of the league risked life and limb to catch up.
The Chicago Bears were the dominating football team. They beat everyone. So we were trying to figure a way to beat the Bears. And our coaches tried to come up with something that would help win. And they came up with an idea that taking our middle guard, we played a 5-3 defense at that time, our middle backer, who was named Rattlesnake Matheson, put tennis shoes on him, put him up on the back of our middle guard, who was head on the center. He'd jump over the center and grab Sid Luckman, who was the Bear quarterback, before he'd get away from the center. We worked on it all week. We go into the Bear game. The Bears get the ball. He gets up on the back of our middle guard. He jumps over and he catches Luckman before he can get away from the center. We run back like a bunch of high school kids. We think we got it whipped. We're going to embarrass the Bears. They can't get a playoff because he's going to get Luckman every time he snaps the ball. Well, the second play, he gets up on the middle guard's back and he starts to jump over the Bear center, who was Bulldog Turner at that time, and Bulldog raised up with his helmet, boom, just like that, in his groin. Rattlesnake went down. He laid on the ground. He didn't want to get up, but he did. He says, time. He walks over to the bench. He said, give me my cleats. That crap won't work.
In 1940, the Bears in their T formation rolled into the NFL championship against the Washington Redskins.
On the first play out of the kickoff, their fullback ran for a touchdown. And we took the ball and drove down the field inside their 10, threw a pass in there and hit Malone in the chest with the ball, and he dropped it. They turned right around, and when they took the ball, they came right on back down, scored on us early again. They had us down about 28-0 in the first quarter, which meant we were in big trouble, of course. All the thing we could do was try to catch up, we thought, but nothing went right that day. They were in more danger of scoring when we had the ball than when they had it.
10 different Bears scored touchdowns, and officials had to ask the Bears not to kick any more extra points because they were down to their last football.
Little sports writers came in the dressing room after the game. They came over to me and they said, what do you think the score would have been if Malone had helped that pass down there when y'all first drove down the field? And I told them it had been 73-7.
The most one-sided game in NFL history stunned the sports world. Not since Grange had the pro game received so much national attention. And the designer of this awesome engine, George Halas, was the #1 football man in the land. Despite the nickname of the Papa Bear, George Halas was not always lovable and cuddly. In fact, he was as tough and as crafty as anyone who ever competed in the NFL.
There comes a knock on the door in the trainer's room, and it's Papa Bear. And the equipment man answers the door. And he said, yes, Coach, can I help you? He says, yes, I'd like to speak to Coach Lombardi. It's very urgent. Now, this is 5 minutes before the game, and he walks in, and here are the two coaches by themselves. He says, yes, Coach, can I help you? And he says, yeah. He said, Vince, I just want you to know you better have your team ready because we're going to kick your ass.
The thing that really annoyed me as a competitor when you went to Wrigley Field was that Halas actually sells seats on our bench. to patrons of the Bears, and the rope would be right behind you, and the fans would be standing directly behind you with the obscenities in your ear while you're trying to hear what's going on and play a football game. So it was a terrible place to play.
There was one little red-headed son of a bugger up in the behind the ivy fence, and he used to get on me something terrible. You know, hey, fatso, when are you going to retire? You're an old man. I said, I'll get you, you little red-headed son of a bugger. You know.
Halas would do things like that. He had a dog on the sideline that near the close of a game that if he needed a timeout, he had the dog trained to run on the field. It was a little black and white dog.
When you walked into Wrigley Field and you had an Atkins, a Bill George, a Larry Morris, a Joe Fortunato, a Stan Jones, an Ed Obradovich, a Rick Caceres, you had some of those gorillas looking at you. It was the damnedest situation you ever went into in your life. You better come to play. Come hell or high water, the Bears were going to put a physical beating on you. I don't care whether you won or lost. You're going to know you in the damnedest game you ever been in your whole life.
Coming from the college game and hearing this talk and all these punches being thrown and the kicking and the gouging and the bad mouth that was going on was incredible. I thought, my God, these guys are unreal. And it was just a typical Lions-Bears thing.
Against the Bears, I said the only way to beat them is just to hit them harder on the first play and put the fear of God and the fear of Walsh into them right off the bat, or whatever your name is. And I said maybe they'll have a little more respect for you before it's over with. But you're going to get hit, and it's going to hurt.
Nicknamed the Monsters of the Midway, Halas's teams wore their toughness like a badge of honor. No other team so clearly reflected the personality of its head coach.
One of the stories that actually happened with Halas was the guy who was penalizing the Bears, and Halas said, "Hollering, you stink," you know, in a few uncertain terms. And so the guy walks off another 15 and says, "How do I smell from here?" You know, that's a true story. He was a tyrant up and down the sidelines. He'd run up there and run down, and he wouldn't stay in his box, and he berated the officials. And his vocabulary during the games, you couldn't possibly put it on tape because he used all the expletives, you know what I'm referring to, bad words and curse words. And people used to come to Wrigley Field just to see Halas, I guess. He'd stomp his hat, but he'd run on the field, and if he got a chance, he'd probably kick a guy.
I saw this overcoated man with his hat run out in the field and literally kick Mac right in the butt. I didn't know who the person was. I just saw, you know, somebody out there doing that. And he tried to get away, and as he was getting away, I was running in that direction, and I took a lunge and a swing at him, and I just missed him. And I found out later, what we found out during the looking at a review of the films, that it was George Halas. If I would have hit him, I'm sure he would have felt it.
As I was trying to get up, I saw these brown shoes jump on my hands. Knowing full well who had these shoes, I came up very slowly with my helmet along this brown vest and butted Mr. Halas gently. And with that, of course, the entire Bear bench jumps up, and George puts his arms like this, and he says, "Hold it." And he came towards me, and I never moved. And he threw both arms around me like he was punching. I never moved. And he threw them around me like this, and he pulled me in tight, and he said, "I always wanted you to play for me." And I've never forgotten it.
Halas's fiery spirit sparked the Bears, but they were always fueled with great talent. Including the Papa Bear, there are 20 Chicago Bears in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, more than any other team. From the Galloping Ghost to the Kansas Comet, Halas built the team in his own image and made the Bears his personal symbol. George Halas leaves behind many memories and friends, but also an imperishable monument, the National Football League. As much as anybody, he is responsible for what millions of Americans do with their Monday nights and their Sunday afternoons. Halas watched his game rise from small-town rivalries to Super Sunday epics. His esteemed position in the NFL is further illuminated by the highest victory total in pro history. What that doesn't reflect, however, are the many lives he touched.
If I were cast ashore in a desert island and could only make one telephone call before I'd call my father or I would call my lawyer, I would call George Halas for two reasons. First, I know that he would do anything for any one of his former ball players, and secondly, I know he's the guy who has the clout that could do it.
He's a very, very warm person, and you can't help but like George Halas. I love George Halas.
He left his love in the men he touched. He left his spirit in the game he loved.
Just being a part of the growth of the National Football League, that to me is the greatest thrill or event in my life.
George Halas, the founding father of the National Football League.